everyone, and welcome back to Printed. I'm your host, Vanessa Gomez, and we're back with our department series. And this time, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into a department that we have visited before, which is the Editorial Department. As always, we're going to talk with our guest about her experience in the industry and a specific career advice for people who are just getting started. But before we dive in, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast. We have some amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We have an amazing guest joining us today. She's the editorial director at Coach House Books, which is one of Canada's most respected independent literary presses. Over the course of her career, she has worked on numerous acclaimed and award winning titles, including 15 Dogs and The Sleeping Car Porter. And both of these have been recipients of the prestigious Scotiabank Giller Prize. Now, beyond her editorial leadership, she is also a novelist and the co founder of Utopia Anthology, and she has been an active contributor to the Canadian publishing industry. So please, everyone, welcome Alana Wilcox to Printed. Hi, Alana, how are you?
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Are you ready to get started?
Let's go.
Okay, perfect. Well, to warm things up, I always like to start with a section that is called the What Are You section. So, Alana, what are you reading, watching, or listening? It doesn't have to be with books, but anything that you're enjoying at the moment.
Sure. I was just in Pittsburgh for a bookseller conference, so of course I had to start watching The Pit. That's my television. Book-wise, I just started reading the new book by Chris Kraus, and I'm going to forget the title, but it's excellent. And that's about it.
Okay, perfect. Well, from my part, I'm finishing up reading Wild Reverence from Rebecca Ross, which is a YA book. I'm listening to a book that I just started, Everywhere and Nowhere. And I'm loving it because it's about immigration in Canada and being an immigrant. I love it. I feel so like seen with it. And then what I've been watching recently, I've just been watching in Hulu, like the JFK Jr. and Caroline Bessette series that's been like super popular. So I'm watching that with my sister. So yeah, thank you so much for that. That's great. And now I want to get started with something a little bit simple for the audience. For those that are not involved in the industry right now, that are just getting started, could you please explain what Coach House Books is, how the list looks right now, and kind of what attracted you to join Coach House Books in the first place?
Sure. So Coach House Books, last year we celebrated our 60th anniversary. We started in 1965 in an old coach house, which is like a garage, basically, or a workshop, right near the campus of the University of Toronto. Um, we publish about 18 to 20 books a year, literary fiction, poetry, some nonfiction. And what maybe makes us a little bit different than the other publishers in Canada is that we have a Heidelberg printing press right in our building, and we print all of our books right here on the spot. We have the binding equipment, and everything just happens right here. We get our paper specially milled for us from second growth forests in Quebec. So it's thick, luxurious paper, and we put it on our Heidelberg, so we get a beautiful book.
Oh, that sounds so great. And you're right, it's so different that you guys have a printing right in the building. I don't think that's common for all other indie presses in Canada.
I think we're the only
Um,
ones left, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask, as we mentioned at the beginning, you're the editorial director right now at Coach House Books. Can you explain to us, maybe briefly, but how you got to that position?
Oh, sure. I've actually been here for 26 years. I was working as a bookseller and a freelance editor, and the people running the place said, "Why don't you just come in maybe a day a week and give us a hand?" And like most things to do with publishing, one day a week turns into 7 days a week, and 26 years pass before you even notice. And so here I am.
Oh, that's so awesome. And now I kind of just want to go back to what you mentioned. So Coach House Books publishes kind of like a variety of books, not just one kind of book. And I was wondering if you could explain to us, when you get a manuscript, is there something that kind of like screams to you, oh, this is definitely a book that we will kind of like publish that feels like us? And could you describe that to us?
Sure, it's a little bit it's a little bit like dating, you
Mm-hmm.
know. You sometimes there's just an instant love connection, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes a little while for it to grow on you. For us, we get thousands of submissions every year, and we have to narrow it down to that 18 to 20 titles. So that's tough work. For us, we like to publish things that are maybe a little bit unconventional. So not we're not publishing romances or romantasy. We're not publishing mystery novels. We're not publishing histories of World War II. We have a fairly clear and consistent aesthetic and mandate. And so we're looking for things that fall within that. For me, when I'm looking at manuscripts, I'm looking for a really singular voice. And it's less about a complicated plot or um, uh, it's really just about the style. I like to feel like no one else is writing anything like that, and that guides my yeah yeah.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I kind of want to go back to something that you say, like Coach House books, they also like try to publish like the unconventional. So exactly what we're not seeing. Like, the romantasy is everywhere and we definitely need those unconventional books. And I was wondering, sometimes people think, oh, because it's a bigger publisher, maybe it's better and maybe it's better for my book. But and I think a lot of people that are learning to the industry come to realize that independent publishers are also sometimes a better fit for a book because they can take those risks. So I wanted to ask you, comparing to, the bigger publishers, which ones do you think are the risks that an indie publisher is able to take just because they're an independent publisher?
Yeah, I mean, I think for every book there's the right, it is
Hmm.
again like dating. You want to date someone who has the right has a is a match for you, right? So if you're writing something, if you're writing a romantasy book, then it makes sense to go with a publisher that is good at publishing romantasy. If you are writing some weird poetry, it makes more sense to go with a publisher who has done well in the space of weird poetry. So it's really about fit. And if people who are looking to shop their manuscripts around, it's really important to read widely and just have a sense of where your book fits in the landscape. So knowing, I often say when people are asking where do I submit my manuscript, I say look at the last 10 books you read and who published them, because that's probably going to give you a good idea of where your own manuscript might fit. And it's, I think, really important to do that research and figure out what the right home is.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes sense. And I was wondering, has that happened in the press where you get submitted manuscripts that are not at all what you published? Has that happened before?
I would say it's at least 75% of what
Oh.
comes in is, yeah. We get romantasy. We get a lot of kids books. We don't
Mhm.
publish kids books at all. Yeah, it's a it can be a bit frustrating because it takes up the time that we would love to
So,
spend on, you know, things that are more productive, right? So
yes. And for those authors that maybe are out there and are looking like for a home for the manuscript, um, would your advice be like kind of like try to like look at the catalog and see what we're publishing instead of just like submitting a manuscript that we're not at the end going to go for?
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of aspiring writers will just send out to absolutely everyone. And it's the reason why it takes us so long to get back to you, because we
Mm-hmm.
have thousands and thousands coming in. And even the ones that aren't a good fit, we have to take the time to answer. So to do that research ahead of time is, I think, really important. It's also for your own sake as a writer. I mean, you know, what if something on our list is is offensive to you, or it's just a weird fit, or you don't want to be associated with you know the books that we publish. It's like you wouldn't take a job without doing a bit of research into the company. It's the same kind of thing. I think you've labored over this book for so long. You want to make sure you're sending it to the right place.
Completely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And now I kind of want to go more into what your work is. You're the editorial director at Coach House Books. For people that are not in the industry or that want to be part of the industry, could you explain what an editorial director does and like kind of like what your everyday tasks look like?
Sure. I mean, every publishing company has very different job descriptions, so it's not the same across the board. For me, my primary job is to run the company. So deal with the finances. Right now working on our audit, our annual audit. It's not that fun. Managing what the rest of the staff are doing, and um, and then in my evenings and weekends, I get to read manuscripts and do some editing. So my job covers a lot of terrain. It's a lot of it is spreadsheets and carrying boxes, frankly.
Okay, yes. No, I'm so glad like you've mentioned that because I think that sometimes people outside of the industry think, "Oh, editors read manuscripts all day," which is not the truth. It's actually in your free time that you do that.
Yeah, yeah. Or they think it's, martini lunches with famous authors, but it's not that either. It's a
Absolutely.
lot of spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheets.
Hmm. Exactly. And now I want to ask, as you said, you've been in this industry 26 years. Before that, you were a bookseller. After you started becoming an editor and throughout your career, have you noticed if your kind of editing style or anything editing process has changed?
I think that it's, over time, it's maybe inevitable that gets a bit faster. I feel
Mm, mhm.
more confident in the decisions I'm making or the questions I'm asking. Um, but the basic process is remains the same. It's editing is about sort of interrogating a manuscript, making sure that it's the best it can be and that it's doing what the author wants it to do, and that is being conveyed to the reader. So, my editorial process is very much about asking questions. Um, Here's how I'm reading this. Is that what you intended to come across, etc. So, that really hasn't changed over the
Okay.
years. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for kind of like this great overview of the department. And I think this is a great time to move into our next section, which is a
Sure.
section that it's more for like people who are starting out in the industry, more kind of like advice of some basics for them. And my first question in this regard is, could you explain to the audience kind of what the editorial process of a manuscript is and what are the stages of that editorial process?
Sure. Editing sort of starts big and gets smaller. So
Mhm.
it's different for every book, of course, depending on what each book needs. But, my first couple of reads through a manuscript, I'll be making notes, asking big questions. I'm not fussing with commas or anything. I'm just thinking about if it's a novel, does the arc of this character make sense? Are there holes in the plot? Are there places where it lags a little, gets a little tedious? Are there things that are missing? All those big questions. And then the next stage, after we're feeling pretty good about the big picture, the substantive edit, that's called, then we move to more of a line edit, which is going, looking at the sentences a little more closely. This sentence feels a little bit weird, or, that kind of thing. And then you move down to copy editing, which is checking for grammar, spelling, and fact checking, including details like sometimes the character has, let's say, blue eyes in the first half of the book and then they turn into brown eyes, catching mistakes like that. And then the final stage is proofreading, which is just making sure nothing weird happened along the way. Sometimes things go wonky. So just making sure that the commas are all in the right places and there's no what's called widows and orphans, which is in means bad typesetting, things like that. So from big down to small.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to describe kind of the editing process for anyone listening. And now I kind of want to go into for, people that want to work maybe at an indie press and they want to be editors. Now that you have been an editor for some time now, what would your advice be for kind of those new applicants to get into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite competitive. There are a number of
Mhm.
publishing schools right now offering courses. Those are a help. But when I'm hiring somebody, I'm looking for somebody who's engaged in the community, who's
Mhm.
maybe shown some initiative by running a chapbook press or a reading series, or just sort of being the literature is a conversation, and it's important to me if someone's going to come on board here that they are involved and interested in that conversation. So, um, it's a bit vague in terms of advice, but go to things, meet people, just show up, right? Be a part of things.
Yes, no, that's great. And I was wondering, many people kind of get into the industry struggle with that, kind of like networking. Do you think that networking and kind of just like putting yourself out there does help get you a position in a publishing house if that's what you want?
Yes, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we just hire friends. That's not the
Mhm.
case at
Yeah.
all. But the more, when I get a resume from someone and four people from different parts of the industry write to me and say, you should really hire this person, they're
Mm,
amazing, that helps, right? So,
right.
it's hard
Absolutely.
to know people from a resume. So
Mhm.
knowing a bit more about someone because they're in the community and they're out doing things is really helpful.
Okay, great. And now I kind of want to end this section with something that might be a big question, but I think it's important. Like, if you want to get into the industry, you should know that um, since you've been in the industry and since you're an active part of the industry, especially the Canadian publishing industry, is there anything at this moment that kind of worries you about the future of the industry, maybe overall or specifically in Canada?
Yeah, it's not the easiest time in publishing for sure. I mean, I think we all know that, if you're on the subway or a bus or something, you see that everybody's looking on their phones where they used to be reading a book. Um, so it's becoming much more challenging to get the word out about books. We used to have reviews and book media and lots of different ways to let people know about books coming out. But now there's not so much. There's social media, which doesn't reach everybody. And they were constantly struggling to figure out how to get the word out about books. That being said, I don't think the book is going away. And I think, especially in the face of AI, um, the sort of slow and sustained attention that is a book feels really important, and hopefully brings kind of a new attention to the book. Um, you know, Books are fact checked, unlike now even your most basic Google search. So for information, for entertainment, for everything, feels like books are going to become, I hope, more central to our lives. But in the meantime, there's a lot of challenges around the industry. Book prices haven't really gone up much in the last 20 years, but everything else has quadrupled. So there's a lot of financial pressure on publishers right now.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that honest answer because I think it's important for anyone getting into the industry to know. Yes, there are some current issues that the industry is going through, but I think I do agree with what you're saying. I don't think books are going anywhere. I think that right now with AI and everything being so virtual, actually people are going back to books and like, oh, I need to get my attention span
Yeah,
back to what it was.
exactly, exactly. I can only read half a page before I need to,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
want to hit next video.
So I'm so glad that people are now realizing, oh, I don't have to scroll on my bed all night. I can actually pick
Yeah.
up a book and maybe get
Yeah.
back to that.
You'll sleep
Um,
better too.
exactly. Yes. So thank you so much for that. And now that I've asked you a couple of questions about the industry, I want to kind of do a fun break for you and the audience. So these are literary rapid fire quiz. So you can just answer
Uh-oh.
as quickly as you think
Okay.
about it. These are easy questions, I promise. What's your favorite book genre?
Literary fiction.
Do you have a preferred book format for you? Hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook?
Paperback.
Okay, great. Do you prefer to buy or borrow books?
I try to buy wherever I can because I feel
Mhm.
like it's important to support the industry.
Okay, yes, great. Is there a book that you wish that you could read for the first time again?
Oh, hmm. I feel like a lot of the books I read in school, I would love to revisit because I think I would come to them with a very different perspective. A book that I've always loved is Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury.
Oh,
And I think that I would love to read that again for the first time as a grown up.
okay, yeah, absolutely. Do you have a preference? Are you a morning reader or a night reader?
I'm a night reader. I don't get a lot of time to spend on books that I want to read because,
Hmm.
I've got thousands currently in the pile.
Totally.
So I usually try to squeeze in at least a few minutes before I go to bed, but that's all I have time for usually.
Okay, yes, that you're very busy during the day. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a fast or a slow reader?
Fast.
Okay,
Have to be.
yes. And the very last one is that if you could recommend one book to everyone listening, what would that be?
Well, it's a tough question because I would choose a Coach House book, but I can't possibly choose one Coach House book out of all the books we've published. So
That's true.
I'm
Yes.
gonna have to. It's like saying who's your favorite child. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
just like the whole list of Coach
the
House.
whole list. Yeah.
We'll take that. We'll take
Okay.
that.
Good. Good.
All right, perfect. You're done with our literary rapid fire quiz. It
I don't
was
think I did very well, but
no, you did well. You did well. No worries. You did well. And the very last section of the podcast is a Q&A from the community. So we just have four
sure.
Q&As for you today.
Great.
The first one is they are asking what keeps you excited about editing after all these years on the job?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I love it. I love books. There's something so satisfying in making a book the best it can be, and to start with something that's maybe got a few problems, and to end up with something that feels like other people I can share with other people, and they're going to love it. Is very satisfying. It's like solving a puzzle in some ways.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the second question that we have is there a book that you have worked on that you felt like it changed you personally?
I mean, all of them do in some ways. It's interesting because, when I'm working on a book, when I'm really deep in, I find myself, using the vocabulary that the author
Hmm.
uses or constructing sentences with the same kind of rhythms that
Yep.
the author uses. Um, so, in that sense, every book that I work on is affecting me in some way.
Hmm.
In terms of, hmm, I mean, it's hard to pull apart one. I guess you mentioned 15 Dogs at the beginning by Andre Alexis, and that because it was such a big success for Coach House, it has definitely changed how things work here. And very busy like selling rights and that kind of thing. And so working on the edits was a fantastic experience, and Andre the author is very open to like really good conversation around it. So in a way it helped me be a better editor, but also just how the book was perceived by the public sort of changed a little bit about how my job works.
Okay, great. Yeah. Our third question is like what kind of book would you wish to see more on the submissions that you get?
I'd love to see people take more chances.
Hmm.
I think there's people are legitimately concerned with, being able to sell the book.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of sort of fairly straightforward narratives. And, I love the weirder stuff. So I'm really happy when I see something come the, across the transom, as they say, with, that's yeah, doing things a little bit differently or,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice for any author. Like, kind of like, don't be afraid to take a chance on what you like because maybe somebody else is gonna like it too, and that's gonna be
Yeah.
your way in.
Yeah. And, it's, you can always tell when a writer is trying to write to something that's not themselves, like trying to write something more commercial or trying to fit into a genre. And so to what's write what you want to write, like deep down, something that's really you, that comes across. It always comes across.
Absolutely. Well, and our last question is, what has been the most rewarding moment of your life as an editor?
Um, there's big ones and small ones,
Hmm.
like every time, because people can come and see their book being glued, like the first copy of their book coming off the press.
Mm.
Every time that happens, it feels like a small miracle. So that's lovely on a day to day basis. The times when I get to make a phone call and say yes, we'd like to publish this book, those are amazing. And then there's books that I'm really proud of the work that I did and how the book ended up that are not necessarily um, widely read or bestsellers, and then some that are. So it's yeah, it feels like a bit of a hedge in terms of the answer, but that really is yeah. Sometimes the smallest, like a response from a reader that's like this book. Um, this book made me love poetry. I was afraid of poetry, and this book made me love poetry. A response like that means more to me than like a bestseller appearance or a prestigious
Absolutely.
review.
No, that makes sense actually. Well,
Yeah.
Alana, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this conversation was great to dive a little bit more into the editorial department for the audience. And before I let you go, I want to ask, where can people follow the press, see what the press is publishing, and if there's anything else that you want us to keep an eye out for the fall or the summer that Coach House Books is bringing?
Sure. We're at chbooks.com. And we're on all the social medias except Twitter. So you can find us there. And lots of great books coming out this spring. We've got a new novel by Lisa Robertson called Riverwork. We've got a spec fic novel by Jeffrey Morrison called The
Mhm.
Coffin of Honey. We've got a poetry anthology called On Occasion, and tons of other great stuff. So
Oh,
um,
that
please
sounds
join our email
amazing.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Everyone listening, please join the email list. Those books sound amazing, and we're so excited. We can't wait for them to publish so we can read them. And the very last thing that I want to ask you is that, when people are getting to the industry, sometimes they get a couple of rejections because this industry is very competitive. And they might be feeling a bit down, like this industry is not for them. For those people that really want to get into the industry but are feeling a bit down right now, can you share some encouraging words so they can keep trying and maybe get a position in the industry one day?
Absolutely. It's, you got to keep at it. It's persistence is really key. And, to use that dating metaphor again, you just never know when the right thing is going to show up on your doorstep. So you got to stay open and ready for that to happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for those kind words. I know that the audience is going to appreciate them. And
Great.
thank you again, Alana. Thank you for giving us some time of your very, very busy day.
Thank you for the excellent questions and for the opportunity to talk. So thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
And that's it for today's episode. Next episode, we have some more amazing guests lined up for you for this season that you do not want to miss. So make sure to follow and subscribe so you do not miss any of the episodes coming. You can also visit publishingguide.com for free resources and information about this season's guests. Follow us on Instagram at the Publishing Guide for updates and behind the scenes content. Leave in the comments any questions that you want to see in any future Q&As for this season. And please note that any views expressed in this podcast are personal and do not reflect the opinion of the host or guest employers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.